What do you really know about money? Did they ever teach you about what money is in school? Or has most of what you think you know about money come from the propaganda media? Chances are, if you went to a government school, they never talked about one of the most important things when it comes to living and competing in America. Money. It's strange that people will spend 13 years of their life with government employees that are supposed to prepare you for life as an adult, and they never, even once, mention money. What it is, where it comes from, how to manage it in your personal life. What's more, most families don't even talk about money. And it's even considered taboo to talk about money with your friends. So what's the big secret? And it is a secret. The government is perfectly happy to keep everyone in the dark about the thing that many Americans focus on the most and spend their whole life trying to acquire. All this time and energy working for these little rectangle pieces of paper, and they know nothing about them. It's insane, really. But it goes to show you the power of the government's ability to socially engineer people. They've managed to get the entire population to spend more time working for globalist corporations and government agencies than they do with their own families, so that they can collect more of these little paper rectangles and nobody ever asks any questions. So for starters, let's talk about what money isn't. And when I say money, I'm going to focus on the American dollar, although it's pretty much the same for any currency issued by a government. Money is not a representation of something physical like gold, stored away in a vault somewhere like Fort Knox. While this was true at certain points in history, the dollar has not been tied to gold since Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. In theory, before that, you could exchange a dollar for physical gold, and dollars were simply more a convenient way of carrying around gold and exchanging gold for goods. Because of this, though, the government could only issue as many dollars as it had gold. This is how many people still think money works, but it hasn't worked like this for almost 50 years. So what is money backed by? What prevents the government from printing more paper rectangles now? The short answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's why it was so important to the globalists that we got off the gold standard. The government wanted to spend more money than it had. This made countries that were doing business with the United States begin to demand payment in gold rather than these paper rectangles because they suspected the United States might be printing more of these paper rectangles than it had in gold. So Nixon's fix was to just remove the connection between gold and the dollar.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets.
This way, the United States could print as many paper rectangles as it wanted, no matter how much gold it had, and countries couldn't demand gold for payment. But that's not possible, you might say. Why is the dollar worth anything if it's not backed by anything? If the government can just print out as many little paper rectangles as it wants, isn't that just making money out of thin air? Well, yes and no. First of all, money has value because the government has socially engineered everyone into thinking that it has value. At least that's why it has value to the general public. They've convinced everyone through propaganda campaigns and forcing people to pay taxes using these little paper rectangles that they have value. And if you don't use these paper rectangles when paying for government fines or taxes, they will use violence and force against you, using people that they pay with more paper rectangles that will put you in prisons that are also paid for by paper rectangles. And they can print those indefinitely. But that trick's only going to work on the American public. So how can they force the rest of the world to use their little paper rectangles? Well, the quick answer is the United States military. After Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, his globalist sidekick, Henry Kissinger, went to the Saudi royal family and cooked up a deal that essentially came down to this. You sell your oil using our paper rectangles. You can only buy oil with our dollars, and we will be your personal army. By forcing the rest of the world to pay for oil using US dollars, our paper rectangles would still have demand in the rest of the world, and in return, we send troops to go and die in the Middle East,
Just 2 hours ago, Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait.
Over and over and over again,
I ordered our forces to launch a cruise missile attack on the Iraqi Intelligence Service's principal command and control facility in Baghdad.
anytime those oil interests or the interests of bankers are threatened.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
And if the American people don't want to go to war because they don't understand this arrangement, we'll just lie to them.
They took the babies out of the incubators.
It was certainly planned by Osama bin Laden.
Weapons of mass destruction.
There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking and is working and is advancing towards the development of nuclear weapons. No question whatsoever.
We'll tell them we're spreading democracy around the world or protecting our so-called allies. And that, my friends, is what money is. Not a storage of wealth, but of military force, provided by the blood and sacrifice of a propagandized public, most of which will never bother to question the system because they're all too busy trying to get more paper rectangles.